episode.
Hey.
Oh, my funny little Valentine. I know you're feeling it. I know you're feeling all the cozies. I can see it.
Oh, yes. Well, yeah. I was actually like, as soon as you start doing the countdown, oh, my hair's crazy, guys. My middle office light started freaking out again, where it comes on and off by itself, even though there's no motion in there. So, it's just another day in the office.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to our Valentine's week episode of Case Files with Kat.
And Ashley.
Well, you're not the only one that's haunted.
I was thinking that as it was going on. I totally forgot about that when she was telling us the story.
So our unofficial third host, well, she's basically the official third host, but our unofficial third host, Sarah, has been being visited. Well, I saw her today and I got the update. So here's what happened. About a month ago, she was asleep in the dead of night, and at about 3 a.m, the witching hour, like at 3 a.m, they're woken up out of the dead of sleep, and her phone is playing 7:40 a.m. radio on iHeartRadio. And I would love for someone to tell me how a phone that's turned off can all of a sudden wake up a person playing a station on iHeartRadio. I don't know how that happens without someone in their sleep saying, Siri, play iHeartRadio.
I don't have an iPhone, so I can't tell you.
So that you need to do some research. Do some research.
I tried asking people with iPhones, and no one said that's ever happened to them before. So,
yeah, it's never happened to me. So then, last week, or I guess no, it was this past Sunday. She gets up at around midnight, 12:30, and she goes to the kitchen, and then goes back to bed. She gets the water, and then she goes back to bed. And everything is fine. And then at 5 a.m., when her husband wakes up, the TV is on. It's on ESPN. And they're thinking, oh, well, one of the kids must have done it. Well, no kid did that. And so they had decided to name the ghost Charlie. It was Charlie the ghost, so that the kids aren't scared. So she text messages her friend and says, hey, were you in the garage and what time did you turn on your TV this morning? And her neighbor says, I didn't turn on my TV, but my TV was on in the living room as well. Okay. Next night, same thing happens. 3:07 a.m., the TV magically turns on. So her husband does some Googling, and you can see the activity on the TV of like when it was last turned on and when it turned off. And it had turned on and turned off twice in the night that they could see on the activity. So in the second night, so they discovered that the plug was a little bit out of the socket. So they jimmied it back in. But if your TV is off and you plug it in, it doesn't turn itself on to ESPN station.
Yeah, my TV has never turned itself on to ESPN, just ever. I don't think it's ever been on ESPN.
I don't think we don't even have ESPN. But I asked a man. I was very gender specific about this question. I said, I'm not an electrician, but guys are handier than I am. And I was like, hey, Jay, if your TV is off and it's unplugged and you plug it in, does it turn itself on? And he's like, no. Said, if it did, would it turn to a specific channel? No. Like, okay. I'm just so Justin's trying to debunk our haunted myth, but we're gonna go with that.
My motion sensor lights are turning themselves on and off all the time, and there's no motion, so I don't know what the explanation for that is.
I don't know. Someone please explain it.
I said,
and then we'll say you're wrong.
I said we could use my Ouija board because it survived the flood, but you don't want to use it to ask Charlie what's up with Sarah's TV. So we could already have this mystery solved if we would just use my board. That you got me, for the record. You got it. And now you don't want to use it with me.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, but the dog is barking and she's like, what is she barking at? And they're like, the ghost. Like, burn it down.
My chihuahua still stares out into space. Always staring down the hallway like it's staring at something. Freaks me out.
That's not right. It's not right. Burn it down. Anyway,
Yes.
How was your Valentine's Day?
I just worked all day and then I went home to my sick puppy. So, I mean, it was great. I'm assuming yours was better. So
It was good. I got some flowers from the Hubs. He took me out to lunch. That was about it.
Yeah, I worked and then I went to the pet store and Walgreens and all kinds of fun stuff.
Isn't it romantic?
I did have coffee with a friend earlier. I had coffee with Hillary earlier in the day, so that was good.
That is good. That's good.
Now that everyone has tuned us out.
Everybody has. But we had a ghost story to share. So this week we're going to do something a little bit different. We decided to split up 10 little stories of crimes that all happened on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Originally,
some of them.
Yes. Sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to say what you were going to say is that originally they were considered all creepy, unsolved mysteries on Valentine's Day, but Kat did some research and found out some have been solved.
But hey, two of the 5 I'm doing aren't from Houston. So did you have any from Houston? That's jacked up. Like, why do we have 2 of the 10 creepiest unsolved?
We probably have more than that just didn't make it to this particular list. This list was from 2016. So.
Word. Yeah. All right. So we didn't have a question of the week. We figured you guys wouldn't be answering it anyway, Valentine's Day and all. But Ashley, are you all moved in to your new spot? Well, your old spot that's become new?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. I mean, stuff's there, I'll probably still be there.
Are you out of the rental?
Yes.
Woo! You can't see it, but I'm popping some champagne. There you go.
I'll probably won't unpack for 25 years, but but the stuff, technically, yes, it has moved from one location to another.
I am so excited. I know everybody who's been listening to the saga that is your life is excited for you as well.
Yes. Always something going on.
It's always something. Okay, so we're gonna just get cracking. Ashley's got to work tonight, so we're gonna bust through these. But yeah, we'll have some references in our show notes, and as always,
yes,
but this is coming from, it's a list called 10 creepy Valentine's Day mysteries that are still unsolved. Again, this is from 2016. Some of mine were solved. So that's good. Update already.
I did look for other things that happened on Valentine's Day, more recently. But I mean, it's mostly just couples killing each. You know what I mean? It's just nothing creepy or crazy. It's the typical lovers quarrel, domestic violence stuff. But I thought some of these were really cool, that are on this list, even if they are a little bit older. Anyways.
Not cool.
Well, you know what I mean? They're unique. It's not all just husband shot, wife shot, boyfriend, love triangle gone wrong, So.
Astronaut wore a diaper across the country. One of those. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to start out with number 10. Bum, 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 bum. The murder of Jodine Sarin. So this actually happens on Valentine's Day in 2007. And the parents of Joe Dean, Art and Lois, went to go visit their daughter. She was a 39-year-old at the time. She was living in a condo. She was living by herself. She did have an intellectual disability, but she was still very high functioning. So she was able to live independently. And all they really had to do was just go and check on her every day, which they did lovingly. But they checked on her all the time. And when they arrived at her condo that night, the lights were on. And so they couldn't unlock the front door. So they showed up, they knocked, they tried to get in, and then but the chain was on there. After not getting an answer from their daughter, they did call out her name. Art, the dad, busted open the door, and he walked in, and he walked into her bedroom, and he was shocked to find his daughter having sex with a man. And so, which part? The sex?
Oh yeah, Kevin point 2.0 just wanted to make an appearance. He thought that was an appropriate time.
Hey. So like any father would do, I mean, he was a little bit pissed, but he was also a bit embarrassed. So he walked out and he said, "Get dressed and you need to leave." And so he walked out, met his wife. He said, "We're going to be in the living room." And he walked out. And so he and his wife were sort of standing there waiting for Joe Dean and this man to emerge from the bedroom. Well, a few minutes had gone by and Joe Dean did not come out. And, they're like any kid, kid that your parent, I mean, oh my God, I'd be mortified at 45 and married. I'd be like, you weren't supposed to see that. So they were wondering where she was. So they went back to her bedroom and they found her dead. She was nude. She was lifeless. She's still on the bed. What they had discovered was that she had been beaten and then strangled to death. But it hadn't been that long. So he was brazen enough to have killed her while her parents were in her apartment. And he snuck out because where they were standing, they couldn't see him leave the bedroom. Wow. And he was able to get out. It's also possible, because she was high functioning enough, it is possible that the sex between her killer was not consensual. So she was high functioning enough to say no. But they were possibly walking in on her being raped, but she didn't ask for help. He could have been strangling her at that point. Yeah. She wasn't able to, but she didn't ask for help. DNA evidence that was collected at the crime scene just kind of stayed there. There was nothing in the system at that point in 2007. But in 2018, in November of 2018, so this is 11 years after the murder, they were able to identify her killer. The Carlsbad Police Department, the CPD, and the San Diego County District Attorney's Office announced that the suspect was a man named David Mabrito. And so he was officially named the suspect in the killing of Joe Dean Sarin, who was 39 at the time. He was 38 on Valentine's Day in 2007. Police say that Mabrito was linked to the murder via a recent advancement of DNA matching technology and genealogical experts. So he was actually a transient, and he died of suicide in 2011. So unfortunately, he never paid for this crime. But they said that they found him in the system because of an unrelated arrest of a family member. So crazy. The process of through the process of elimination, they found that he had lived in North County. He had family in the area. They didn't say how the detectives made the connection, but they never got rid of his DNA sample, and they had gathered it at a traffic stop because he had matched the description of somebody else, and they held onto it.
It's weird that he died in 2011, but this list came out in 2016 and it's still listed as unsolved if he was like convicted of it.
He died in 2011, but it was in 2018.
What was
they discovered the DNA?
Gotcha.
He was arrested. They kept his DNA.
Yeah, gotcha.
And the fact that they kept it is fantastic.
Yeah.
And they just go back and retest it because there's all these new advancements. And he died shortly after the sample was taken, and they never processed it at the time, but they never got rid of it either. They said that when they ran his DNA against the crime scene evidence, again in Jodine's case, the matching technology returned a 1 in 64 quintillion match. So that's a number with 18 zeros in it. So like there's virtually zero statistical probability that it could be anyone else but him.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? 1 in 64 quintillion. I didn't even know that was a number.
Like I can't. That is so crazy. Like that her parents were sitting in her living room when he killed her, and then he just left. Like it was nothing.
I'm not even kidding when I say that. Like I don't know that I could live with myself.
I'm surprised he let them live in case they had seen him. Like when they went in the.
Well, it was dark.
Yeah, but he didn't. Yeah. He wasn't sure. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't know if the parents would stop. Like that's. I'm very surprised he allowed the parents to live.
I wonder if she had met him and felt, because her door was locked.
Yeah.
That chain was on the door. So that's crazy. I wonder if she had met him and just sort of befriended him and he asked to use her bathroom or something. Like, I don't know. It seems really, really bizarre how he got in there without like any sign of a forced entry or whatever. But anyway, so that is Jodine Sarin. I'm so glad that there's a resolution to that, even though he never saw justice. But I'm glad there's a resolution. All right, you're up.
Okay, so this one is the disappearance of China Rose Sims. So in February of 1988, English furniture dealer David Sims took a business trip to the Philippines. And while he was there, he got married to a woman named China Rose. She was 20 years younger than him. And she, instead of like them living there, she came back with him. So she went back to England with him. And eventually they moved into a house in the South End. So he goes on this business trip. He meets this woman and like they pretty much almost instantly get married. And so, again, she was 20 years younger than him. So they move in. They're in England. Of course, I know this is a shocker. When you marry someone you meet, almost instantly, the marriage started to fall apart. China had told her sister that she wanted to leave David. She had stated that David had started becoming violent towards her. She said, or she claimed, or so her sister claims, that David had told her he'd hire someone to kill her because it was cheaper than getting a divorce. So she had told all of this stuff to her sister, claiming that's what David said. So on Valentine's Day in 1993, China attended a family party, and this was the last time anyone could confirm that she was alive. So even though China had expressed interest in returning to the Philippines to see her father, because her father was really sick and her family kind of wanted her to come back and, kind of see him for the last time. And she wanted to go. She never contacted her family again. She never got to see her dad. And her sister didn't hear from her again. The last time was that family party. So not only did she go missing without an explanation, but her husband also dropped off the map. So David
What?
also disappeared.
Like right then too? Like at the same time?
Right. Yeah. Right. Like 2 months. Like, so David was last seen at the couple's house 2 months after she disappeared, but then he vanished without explanation. And so the thing that's weird about David disappearing is he actually had 2 daughters from another marriage. So he had previously been married and he had children. So it was weird that he would do that. But it said that he had, when he had gotten married to China or whatever, he had ceased contact with his daughters. But they still felt it was kind of weird that he would just disappear without any kind of like note to them or whatever. Anyways, years later, the police would track down Jeffrey Paston, who had previously shared the home with David in China. So he was kind of like a live-in like roommate. According to Jeffrey, David had asked him to sell the house and put the proceeds into an account under David's alias, Anthony Peter Lewis. So approximately 40,000 pounds of this money was collected by a man claiming to represent David, and at least 10 pounds remains in the account to this day and has never been touched.
10 pounds.
It is
nothing.
Huh?
10 pounds?
10,000 pounds.
Oh, 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Oh.
So 40,000 was taken out, 10,000 was left and never touched again. It is speculated that China was murdered, but they can't prove it because no body, no crime. They can't find David. They can't confirm the man who went to get the money that was representing David, supposedly, was actually David. So they can't prove that. So technically, the case is still unsolved as far as I couldn't find anything. That her and her husband are still missing. So it hasn't been confirmed if he murdered her, who murdered her, where she is, where he is. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Didn't we do another story where someone was like, "Oh, I'm representing." I feel like that was in another story with someone else like who's representing it was actually the person.
I'm sure it was, but so according to this, yeah, they couldn't figure out what happened. Yeah. So she has not been found.
So could he have gone, she was from the Philippines, could he have gone to the Philippines, or could he have, I don't know, could he have gone?
My thing is like maybe whoever got the money was the one that was hired to kill her and he just killed both of them so he could get all of the money and just left 10,000 so people wouldn't like be suspicious. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's as good a I don't know, but
I should make a side note that David was at one time a trusted police officer. So if he did something, would they cover up for him? Who knows? He had
man, yeah.
So just some background on David, because I just want to say this. So over there, he was in part of the Special Patrol Group, which is a group of officers who are like the first ones to respond to like public disputes and stuff. And the group itself had been accused of using like excessive force. There was all kinds of issues, but yeah, he was part of that. He was appointed to that, and so he was a police officer. And it was said that like once he joined that, his whole personality changed. He did have a lot of violent tendencies. His three previous wives divorced him on the grounds of violent temper tantrums. So, is it that crazy that, was what she probably wasn't lying. China probably wasn't lying about him like being violent. It was 5 years into the marriage when she started telling her sister that he was becoming increasingly violent, that he was going to hire someone to murder her. she would tell people at her work that she feared David, that he abused her regularly, that he was going to kill her. So yeah, but
that makes me so sad. Like if I had a friend telling me that, or a coworker who I wasn't friends with, I would just be like, "We are getting you out." Like, so this is it.
Yeah, in 2020, there was another article about them, and the police believe that the couple was both murdered, collectively murdered.
2 months apart. 2 months apart, though. Wow.
2 to 3 months apart. A detective working on the case said in 2001 that David had connections with a business in in 2 different countries, one of them being Thailand, and it was possible that he had been trading drugs and that he may have been killed due to illegal activities. But again, he hadn't had contact with his daughters, and they had said that even though they weren't talking, he would still contact them on their birthdays and stuff. And after 1993, when China disappeared, they never received another birthday card, never received another birthday call. So yeah, to this day, it is still unsolved. Now, that roommate that sold the house and put the money into the account was arrested, but the police never said why he was arrested. So yeah. So he was the only one. He's the only one that's been arrested in the case. But they technically didn't say it was because of the case. They just arrested him in...
Weird.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, they're still missing.
Okay. All right. Well, number 8, I have the murder of Marilou Jerry. So this is one of the Houston stories. So on the morning of Valentine's Day in 1986, Stephen Jerry left his Houston home to go to work. And according to him, his wife, Mary Lou, was still in bed at the time. A few hours later, Stephen called Mary Lou's mother, Maria Serrato, from his work and claimed that Mary Lou wasn't answering the phone. And so he asked Maria to visit their home.
Tell your cat we're trying to be serious right now.
He's not having it. All right. So he asked her to visit and to help go check on her and help Mary Lou prepare for a party that was happening that day. Maria was like, yes, of course, I'll do that. But when she arrived at the Jerry residence, she was horrified because she discovered that her daughter had been murdered. She was shot 4 times, and her body contained bullets from both a 38 and a 22. There was no sign of a break-in or a robbery. And of course, everybody suspected Stephen. Stephen did own several handguns. None of them were actually used to shoot Mary Lou. And he seemed to have an alibi, but some aspects of his alibi seemed pretty suspicious. That particular morning, Stephen left home a few hours earlier than usual. And he went to go run errands. He visited a lot of different locations, 7-Eleven, post office, donut shop. He was definitely trying to be seen, which to me is like, I've seen movies like that.
Yeah.
You go to a bunch of places to have an alibi. The day after the murder, Stephen raised some eyebrows by returning to all of these same locations, specifically to remind the employees that he had been there the previous morning.
Wow.
You are fucking guilty. I mean, come on. So the possible motive was $400,000 insurance policy that Stephen had taken out on his wife. Mary Lou's parents actually took Stephen to court to prevent him from collecting the money, and obviously accusing him of the murder. And the two parties eventually reached an out-of-court settlement, but those details are sealed. So we don't know what was actually paid out.
Yeah.
he has always maintained his innocence, so officially, his wife's murder is still unsolved. But detectives reopened the case and are now using resources that were not available in 1986. This is what one of the detectives said. Because of all the new DNA and technology available to us now, we are sending a lot of information and evidence back to the crime lab to have it examined for a second or third time. We're re-examining all of our cold cases, but this one is near to my heart because I have a family. And when Mary Lou's mother, Maria, came to my office and showed me her picture, that image has haunted me since then. On the day of the murder, Jerry was actually, Mary Lou was planning to host a birthday party for her mom at their house.
Wow.
So happy birthday, Mom. Here is your dead daughter. Like, he did that.
Yeah.
He did that.
That's crazy.
Ugh. So one of the siblings said, my sister knew who killed her. My sister would have never opened the door for someone she didn't know. And I don't believe for 1 minute my sister was taken by someone at the front door. The brother said this. So he was talking to the Houston Chronicle, and even with an $80,000 reward posted back in the 1980s, that's a lot of money, no one ever called with tips on the case. Detectives later said that the bullets that were fired from the two guns, a .22 caliber and a .25 caliber pistol. So the Fort Bend County Crime Stoppers is asking anyone with information related to the murder to give them a call. The Crime Stoppers number is 281-342-TIPS, and your call will be anonymous.
I'm not, if you guys heard me laugh, I'm sorry, but there is a cat in the background of Cat's video, and it's just casually walking along this shelf and like just doing weird shit behind her. And I'm trying not to laugh because the story is very serious, but this cat's just, and then for the longest time I could just see his tail in the frame. And this is why we don't post videos of our recordings, people.
Well, it's that shelf is full of Lego.
Yeah, but
and so if one of them falls, it'll be the loudest thing.
But he went across to some other shelf and just his tail was in the frame. Like half his body was on one shelf and half was on. That's why I was trying not to laugh.
You got a cat butt shot.
Okay, so my next story, actually, I remember this happening. It happened in South Carolina, probably about. I don't remember. I remember it being like a thing. It happened probably about 3 or 4 hours from where I lived in South Carolina, but it's the story of the discovery of Julie Valentine. So it was on
Valentine's Day? That's her name, Julie Valentine?
I think they called her Valentine because... So it actually happened on the morning of February 13th, 1990. Glenn Hayward was walking through a field located behind the mall in Greenville, South Carolina. He was looking for some flowers to give his wife for Valentine's Day. And the site had been known for like an illegal dumping ground. There was like just stuff everywhere, kind of, just like trash like you see on the sidewalk. And so he came across a Sears vacuum cleaner box and noticed like this really foul odor coming out of it. And so when he opened the box, he found the decomposing body of a new infant girl. Like she was a newborn. She was a baby. The deceased child was covered with a blanket and some newspaper. Her, I can't say this word. How do you say it?
Umbilical.
Yes, thank you, Kat, for the assist. Was still attached, and the placenta was inside the box. It's estimated that the infant had been born approximately 5 days before she was discovered and died only 2 days after her birth. All indications were that the child had been born very healthy, and since traces of food were found inside her stomach, she had been cared for at some point. Like at some point, they had been taking care of her. So investigators were unable to determine the cause of death or to uncover her identity, so she received the name Julie Valentine. The only major lead they had at this time was a reported sighting of a man inside a red Pontiac, which was parked at the site 3 days before the infant was found. However, no one knows if that man had any connection to the case, so her identity couldn't really be established. And at the time of this list, she was still known as Julie Valentine, but they did actually solve this case. In 2019, the forensics department at the Greenville Police Department, they had a laboratory report from a woman that had been charged. I don't know how they necessarily got her DNA, but they ran hers, and it was the mother. It matched the report found that this woman was the biological mother of Julie Valentine. It said, according to a police report, the analysis of Brooke Graham, which was the woman's DNA, concluded that Julie Valentine's DNA is consistent with being the biological child of Brooke Graham Willis, also known as Brooke Graham. It is approximately 4.5 quadrillion times more likely to see these genetic results if Brooke Graham and the father's name was removed from the report, are the biological parents of Jane Doe, aka Julie Valentine, than if two random unrelated individuals are the biological parents. Given the genetic evidence, greater than 99.99% of randomly tested individuals would be excluded as the possible parents of Julie Valentine. So that report was turned over. Graham was arrested in 2019. She was charged with homicide by child abuse. She did end up getting charged. So her and her boyfriend, which was the child's biological father, lived very close to this field. They never said why they did what they did, but it was confirmed that they were the reason. Not the reason, they were the ones that did it. And so
did he drive a red Pontiac?
It didn't say. But she got 29 years in prison.
Wow.
Yeah. So let me see how much the boyfriend had. I know she got 29 years because people were really upset that she only got 29 and didn't get life in prison.
So when they say child abuse, the baby died from abuse or just from neglect, did they leave her out there alive and she died?
No, I think they just mean they could have done
a shake her, the baby kind of thing.
They killed, yeah. But yeah, I don't know if the boyfriend was charged, but she was definitely charged. Like I said, 29 years. She did get convicted, so yeah.
Oh, that's so sad.
They do have a, in honor of Julie Valentine, there is a Julie Valentine Center, which is a nonprofit organization that provides free confidential services to sexual assault and child abuse survivors and their families or their caregivers. So there was some good that came out of it, even though, unfortunately, she did have to pass away. There was this nonprofit started in Julie Valentine honor, even though they didn't actually ever release the name of her in any of the articles that I saw. So, but anyways, just so everyone knows, the mother did have to serve time. She did get arrested. She is in jail. I don't know about the boyfriend, but they really only focus on the mother. And at the mall where she's found, there's a sign that has her name on it or whatever, a little memorial to her. So tells people how to find the nonprofit type thing.
Oh, that makes me so sad. If you don't want your baby, there are people who do. Ugh. Okay, so number 6, that makes me really sad. I am going to talk about the murders of Nicholas Kunzelman and Stephanie Hart. Now, this is one I definitely heard of, I think because of where they worked. So this happened and also because of where they went to school. So this happened on April 20th, 1999. One of the most infamous school shootings of all time took place at Columbine High School in Colorado, and where 13 innocent people were murdered. But that was obviously something that hung over that town. They were just plagued by it. But at the time, 15-year-old Nicholas Kunzelman and his 16-year-old girlfriend, Stephanie Hart, they were sophomores at Columbine, and he worked at a Subway that was near the school. And shortly before 1 a.m. on Valentine's Day in 99, another Subway employee drove by and noticed that the lights were still on at the store, even though the place was supposed to be closed. So it was unusual for lights to be on at this point. When the employee went inside, she discovered that Nicholas and Stephanie had both been shot to death behind the counter. Nicholas had been working the night shift, and Stephanie stopped by to visit him while he closed up. That's so sweet. At some point, they were ambushed by an unknown assailant. In an eerie coincidence, one of the original Columbine victims, Rachel Scott, just happened to have been employed by the same Subway shop at the time of her death. The only lead was the sighting of an unidentified man in a red jacket walking away from the store shortly before the bodies were discovered. So since nothing appeared to have been stolen, robbery didn't seem to be the motive. An investigation would reveal that a drug ring was operating in the area. And so it's been theorized that the murders might have been drug related. In fact, Stephanie's mother even made a failed attempt to sue the shop's owner, alleging that he allowed illegal drug activity to take place on the property. But after 16 years, authorities have still been unable to determine who murdered Nicholas and Stephanie. Investigators say both were shot by at least one unknown intruder. In February of 2021, the reward for information jumped to $100,000 in the hopes that it would inspire someone to give some kind of information. So $100,000. If you know something, say something.
That one's still unsolved? Well, obviously.
That one's still unsolved. Yeah, did you do that story?
Which one?
This one, the Subway?
No.
Oh, I feel like
I don't know. I think I've seen a show on it. I don't think I've. No, I didn't cover anything about Subway. I'm sorry. I just, to backtrack real quick about Julie Valentine. I was like, how did they get the DNA? And I remember, so I read something else and it said, this is really sad. So the way they discovered all of this is because one of the detectives on the case said that the finding of the baby reminded him of a cold case from a few years before. And so they did the DNA on that baby and compared it to Julie Valentine. And it was confirmed that the boy matched her as being an older sibling. And then they knew from that boy belonged to Brooke, and that tied her to Julie. So apparently she had killed a baby before. Same situation, found it on the side of the road, brand new baby. So, yeah. So that's how they connected all of that, because at the time that the baby boy was found, there was not the advancements in the technology in DNA. And so when they found Julie Valentine, they had that technology and it was all linked together, her and him matched. And yeah, but she only got charged for Julie Valentine's, not the other one. So
what?
I'm just telling you.
What?
I'm just telling you. So this next case is the disappearance of Maureen Fields. And actually,
hold on.
Yes.
That's some bullshit. What? How could they not charge her with that?
I don't know. Oh. I just know she was getting sentenced to 29 years for Julie Valentine specifically. They did not mention her getting charged for the older baby that was found.
Tie her tubes. Don't let her get pregnant again.
I was actually going to do this story at one time, this particular woman. This is the disappearance of Maureen Fields. I didn't do the story because it is very short, but in 2006, 41-year-old Maureen Fields seemed very perpetrated when she showed up for work on Valentine's Day at the Wells Fargo Bank in Nevada. So she was in the midst of like a really troubled marriage. So according to her or according to her coworkers and stuff, her husband was very domineering. His name was Paul. She seemed
very perturbed or very perpetrated.
I don't know. It says perturbed.
Perturbed. Okay. Perturbed. Okay.
That's what it says.
Two really different words.
It says she seemed very perturbed when she showed up for work. Oh, well, whatever. I thought I said perturbed.
Like, what?
Anywho, so again, her husband was very domineering. Her coworkers said there's something according to her coworkers, she told them that something's going to happen. The very next day after her saying that, she went missing. So she shows up to work on Valentine's Day. She tells her coworkers something's going to happen. Very next day, she's gone. So according to her husband, Paul, Maureen left their residence that morning to go to work, but she never arrived. So one day later, Maureen's abandoned vehicle was found stuck in the sand in a remote section of like a desert near Death Valley. And her purse and several other belongings, including a pair of pantyhose, were left behind. There was also a blanket on the ground, and the blanket itself, when they tested it, had traces of blood and vomit. There was an empty Xanax bottle that was found. So the initial speculation of the police and the investigators was that she must have wandered off into the desert and committed suicide. Because why not? It's just
because, leave a blanket with your own vomit.
Well, not just that, but like you tell your coworkers that you're scared of your husband and something's going to happen. And then the next day you go missing. But sure, she's the one that committed suicide. So anyways, her body never turned up. And since the pill bottle had conveniently been wiped completely clean of fingerprints, it seemed like the scene was staged. Male DNA was found on the pantyhose, but it did not match her husband. Of course, he was the prime suspect, but the only DNA they found didn't match him. So in 2012, which was 6 years later, the case, there was like a surprising turn. The DNA was matched to an elderly convicted sex offender whose name was Keith Wayne Holmes. When questioned, Keith claimed that he had had consensual sex with Maureen before leaving her alone in the desert. Keith also claimed to know Paul, but by this point he was suffering from dementia and could not provide any concise answers. Keith died in prison hospice care in April 2014. It was never confirmed. They could not confirm that he killed her. For all they knew, the sex was consensual. Paul, her husband, does continue to be the prime suspect in the disappearance, but the actual details of what happened remain unclear. And that case is still to this day, well, as of 2020, still unsolved because they couldn't determine if Keith was telling the truth or not, if he did have consensual sex with her or if he didn't. But yeah, according to records, her case is to this day still unsolved. The last time she was seen alive was on Valentine's Day at her job, telling her coworkers something was about to happen. And that's that story. She tells her coworkers something's going to happen. She has sex with this registered sex offender in the desert, and then she disappears. And there's a staged suicide scene. I don't know what to tell you. It's a whole lot.
It's just a lot. It's just like, we're going to take parts of a story and put them together. Honestly, and it didn't specify. It's going to make sense.
It didn't specify if the sex offender became a sex offender after her disappearance. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there was a 6-year time gap from the time they matched his DNA to the DNA at the crime scene. So I don't know if I don't know what was happening between those 6 years is all I'm saying. Like, I can't assume, but I would think she went willingly have an affair on her husband, and it just happens to be a sex offender who also knows her husband, and then stages her suicide. Like, that seems
It's so bizarre.
I know.
That is such a bizarre story.
Anyways, she's to this day still never been found. Her body's never been found. No one's been convicted, and her husband is still the prime and only suspect. So
they're like high-fiving each other, like, we did it. All right. Okay, so this is another Houston story. It is the mysterious death of Antonio Saldivar. So at approximately 6 p.m. on Valentine's Day in 2014, 17-year-old Houston teen Antonio borrowed his mother's car to go and visit his girlfriend. He was planning to give her a teddy bear to her as a Valentine's Day gift. But he wound up missing. He didn't show up for his curfew that night, and which led his mom, of course, to call him and text him. Finally, at 4 a.m., Antonio finally answered his phone and let his mother know he was on his way home. Within half an hour, Antonio totaled his mom's car by crashing it into a concrete pillar. But Antonio was nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found at the crime scene or at the accident scene. But strangely, his shoes were left behind in the car, and Antonio remained a missing person until February 27th. It's like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
An employee from the Texas Port Recycling scrap metal plant discovered his body. It was trapped underwater beneath the dock inside the Houston Ship Channel, and he was found about 2 miles from the accident scene. I want to say crime scene, it's the accident scene. It's possible that he became disoriented and wandered away from the scene, which caused him to drown. But a lot of details just weren't adding up, unlike your previous story with like the sex offense. I mean, there's just not, I don't know, that one, there's your story, nothing goes together, and it makes me mad. Anyway, so he never actually, all that time that he was gone, so 6 p.m. until when the accident happened, all that time that he was gone, he never actually made it to his girlfriend's house.
Oh.
No, she never got that teddy bear.
Yeah.
And that teddy bear, when he was found, was actually found inside of his pants.
Weird.
Between his legs.
Oh.
So it was like on his person, in his pants, inside.
That's weird.
Like in between, like his groin area, right? One witness told police they saw a dark SUV run Antonio's car into the pillar. Antonio was also found inside a secure area near the scrap metal plant, which was inaccessible to the search volunteers who had been looking for him. So how did he end up there? I mean, that's the crazy part. Someone must have let him in. Someone had to have let him in, but they are still searching for answers. Like, this is super duper unsolved. Like, that's the end of the story for Antonio. And I mean, it's heartbreaking because he was a young kid.
Well, it's so scary to think like someone can get away with murder so easily. Easily. You would think they'd have some kind of like scanner where it could tell you who scanned in and out. You know what I mean? Like, who was the last person in this restricted area? Like, especially
in 2014. Yes. I'm sure there had to have been cameras, something like that.
That's sad.
And, they probably don't have like a lot of money to do really to fight this, to have somebody on their side to fight that. Like, that just makes me sad. So
this story is the murder of the Rundle family. In 1985, Cassandra Rundle was 37 years old. She was a two-time divorcee living in Colorado Springs. She had two children. She had a 12-year-old Diedrich and a 10-year-old daughter named Melanie. And on the morning of February 14th, Cassandra's second ex-husband showed up at the house to deliver her a vinyl record as a Valentine's Day present to her. To his horror, he discovered the entire family had been brutally murdered. Cassandra's nude body was found on her bed. She had been tied up, raped, and beaten before then being strangled to death. Melanie, who was the 10-year-old, her body was found in her own bedroom. She had also been raped and strangled. She had a fractured skull, and the condition of Melanie's room indicated a major struggle before her death. Diedrich had been beaten to death inside his own bedroom, and next to him was a bloody hockey stick, which had been used as a weapon on all three family members. It seemed likely that Diedrich had gone outside that morning before the killer had arrived and returned to the house while the murders were happening. So in the months before her death, Cassandra had taken out personal ads in a local newspaper. She had received more than 80 responses and made contact with several of those men, but no evidence could be found to link any of those men to the murders. Suspicion had been directed towards one man. He was a former soldier. His name was Philip E. Wilkinson. He is currently sitting on death row in North Carolina for the 1992 triple slaying of a mother and her two children, not the same murder. But again, that crime bore some obvious similar things to the Rundle murders, but Wilkinson has never been connected to that case. This case is still unsolved. They don't have any suspects. There's no difference in the investigation from the time it happened to today. If you should by somehow have any idea of what happened, the police ask that you contact the Colorado Springs Police Department and let them know if you witnessed anything, if you saw anything, because they have no witnesses. There's no DNA, like literally they have nothing. So that's that case. No witnesses.
Okay, so my last story is the disappearance of Marcy Jo Andrews. So you said something earlier, no body, no crime. We said that a lot. So this is like one of the only cases that I think we've ever covered that the no body, no crime saying does not apply. So listen to this. So in 1984, 24-year-old Marcy Jo Andrews and two of her friends spent Valentine's Day attending a party at the Chicago apartment of Casey Nowicki. 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 So Nowicki was driving the women home when he crashed into a viaduct, injuring Andrews's ankle. He gave his car keys to her friends and asked them to call a tow truck while he took her to the hospital in a taxi. Later that night, the women called his apartment and spoke with Marcy Jo. I'm sorry. Where am I? And spoke with Marcy Jo, who sounded really scared, and claimed that Casey had never took her to the hospital, and this would be the last time that her friends ever heard from her. Why didn't they call the police right here? I don't know. Anyway, over the next few days, they made repeated attempts to visit Casey's apartment, but he claimed that Marcy Jo had already left and refused to let them inside. Again, why aren't you calling the police? So when finally the police were notified, Casey told the same story and denied all knowledge of Marcy Jo's whereabouts. In 2000, Casey Nowicki was finally charged with Andrews' murder. The prosecution's theory was that Casey took Marcy Jo back to his apartment and drugged her with THC.
That'd be a lot of THC.
That would have to be a lot of THC. I don't know. So that he could repeatedly sexually assault her. I have been high, but not like that. Like, that is, she must, it would had to have been an enormous amount to make you not able to defend yourself. I don't know. The prosecution produced numerous witnesses who claimed to have seen Marcy Joe in his apartment in the days following the accident. So they actually had eyes on her, and they did come forward and attest to that. One witness was a man named Michael John Panisi, and he did testify to seeing a nude Marcy Joe handcuffed to a radiator, and then later seeing her dead on the floor. So he saw her twice. Panisi claimed that Casey Nowicki gave Marcy Joe a deliberate THC overdose before disposing of her body. Casey Nowicki's defense team argued that the prosecution's witnesses were unreliable since most of them had criminal records and were offered deals in exchange for their testimony. But nevertheless, Casey was still convicted of rape and murder and sentenced to life imprisonment.
Yeah.
And in spite of this, her body has still never been found. So there was a Reddit user named KittyCat0930, not me, tells a very personal version of the story as her mom was friends with Marcy Joe. So there is a link in the notes, but I want to say this. So I'm gonna start it a little bit of it. I'm just gonna give you a little bit of it. So Marcy and my mom had been really good friends for years. They frequented a bar together called Tuts, where she would end up meeting my dad. Before my mom met my dad in 1981, Marcy and my mom hung out with some dangerous people. My mom's friend Bill was so worried that he told my mom if she continued to hang out with Marcy, she could end up dead. However, after my parents met, my mom hung out with those dangerous people less. Marcy did not. And on Valentine's Day in 1984, Marcy and my mom's friend Dory and Gay went to the apartment of Casey to buy drugs. He was a dealer and he was dangerous. Dory and Gay did PCP and Marcy smoked weed. They were there for hours and people came and went to pick up drugs. At around 7 p.m., Casey offered them a ride home. Dory was in the front passenger seat and Marcy was sitting behind her with Gay behind Casey. Suddenly, Casey slammed into a viaduct and Dory's seat got pushed back and broke Marcy's ankle. She couldn't stand at all. Casey started screaming at the girls, "You're all bitches, witches. This is your fault." He didn't have insurance, which was why he was so angry. The police arrived and Casey gave his keys to Dory and told Dory and Gay to wait for the tow truck while he would go to the police station with Marcy and then take her to the hospital. My mom said back then the rules were girls always stayed together for safety and that Dory and Gay should have said that Marcy could stay with them and they'd take her to the hospital. Despite that's still kind of the rule, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I don't think that's not a rule now.
Stay together, girls. Stay together. Despite her having a broken ankle and the girls waiting for a tow truck, they could have taken her to the hospital after it arrived. My mom's always been convinced Casey crashed on purpose. Unfortunately, Marcy never made it to the hospital because Casey never had any intention of bringing her there. Dory and Gay went back to Dory's apartment and tried calling Marcy, but she didn't answer. They then called Casey, but he never answered either. Casey eventually called Dory back asking about his car. She told him he hadn't given her enough money so it was towed somewhere else. He screamed at her about it. Dory then asked where Marcy was and if she'd been dropped off at the hospital. Casey avoided answering her questions. Dory continued to call him and she'd only bring up his car his car keys if she could talk to Marcy. So Casey put Marcy on the phone, and she sounded terrified and high. Her speech was slurred, and she talked very slowly. She begged Dory to come and get her. She said, "Please get me out of here. He's really scaring me. I have to get out of here." Dory, Gay, and a friend John went to his apartment, but he wouldn't answer. They called him from a bar across the street and even threw rocks at his window. They could see someone in there, but he never answered. The next day, Dory called again, and Casey finally answered. She asked why he didn't answer the night before, and he lied and said she'd never come over. He then demanded she give him his car keys and claimed Marcy had left. Dory knew that was a lie because Marcy had broken her ankle after the car accident, and she was unable to walk. Dory told him she'd bring his keys over if he let her see inside his apartment to see if Marcy was there. Dory took her brother and Gay to Casey's apartment and rang the buzzer. Suddenly, Casey came running down the stairs to the main floor, screaming at Dory. So Dory and Gay never called the police. My mom is still angry and blames them for what happened to Marcy. My mom doesn't know why they didn't go to the police because she would have been alive. And it goes on and on. It's a very long story, but it's a very...
Don't ever leave your friends. And if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right.
Yeah, it was like a 3-day ordeal. Marcy was just zombified, had really been pumped full of drugs, whatever they happened to be. But, whether it was PCP or THC or whatever, she was not doing well. She was vomiting, and they saw her, and they never... and this is all, in the testimony, and he is in prison, but they saw her and they didn't say anything. But it is on Reddit. The link will be in the show notes if you want to read the whole story. It's awful. But thanks to kittycat0930 for posting that.
Well, my last story is the murder of Billy Trimbock. So on Valentine's Day in 1992, Billy and Cindy Trimbock were married in Colorado. And on the date of their first anniversary, so Valentine's Day 1993, Billy was shot to death, and he was found by the side of a frontage road outside of Wiggins, which was approximately 50 miles from where they were living. In an odd twist, the sheriff was actually the sheriff who was investigating the case just happened to pass this, he was driving past the same road shortly before Billy was found. So the sheriff that was investigating was actually on that road either shortly after it happened or right before. He remembered seeing multiple vehicles at that same exact spot, and assumes that he unknowingly drove past the killer while they were disposing of Billy's body. The investigation eventually turned towards Cindy, who was the wife. She collected a $500,000 life insurance policy on her husband's death. There was physical evidence. There was physical evidence that was also found inside Cindy's car to suggest that Billy's body had been there at some point, after he died. The cloud of...
really? Because, Jason's been in my car, and I've been in his car.
It specifies that after... I don't know how they know, but there's evidence that his body was in the car. The cloud of suspicion compelled Cindy to move to Montana with James, which was her 10-year-old son from a previous marriage, and there would soon be a shocking postscript to this story. In April of 1994, a Butte newspaper, which is where she was living, ran an article about Billy's murder, which happened to mention that Cindy was a suspect. James was teased about this on the school playground by an 11-year-old classmate named Jeremy Bullock. James responded by pulling out a gun and shooting Jeremy to death on the playground. James was sent to a juvenile home for the crime, and Cindy died of natural causes in 1996. Over the years, rumors have spread that Cindy hired someone to carry out Billy's murder, and at least one drug dealer has bragged about being involved. However, nobody knows what actually happened. The crime is still unsolved. Many of the investigators say that there were so many obstacles, and the case itself was hampered because of the bizarre circumstances in this case. There was a lack of evidence, and most of the people involved were meth users. So their information was discredited. It didn't make sense. And so they're still looking for witnesses, anyone that knows anything. If you should happen to know anything, they want you to call the Morgan County Sheriff's Office. It's 970-867-2461, and just ask for the on-call investigator. You can also call the Northern Colorado Crime Stoppers, because they're both still actively looking for this case. If you actually look into the story, it is bizarre. I might actually do this story, full in-depth story on an episode, because it's just crazy. The son, just 11-year-old, pulled out a gun and shot someone on the playground because someone was teasing him about his mother killing the husband. I don't know. It's another one of the suspects. He had a gun. Another one of the suspects in the case committed suicide. All kinds of stuff is bizarre about this case. So, but technically the case is still unsolved. He was murdered on Valentine's Day, 1993, and there's been nothing since then. No evidence. There's been evidence, but nothing that has led anywhere. So that's my last story as well.
Well, we hope we've enlightened you and made you feel all those romantic feelings.
Just remember how much better your Valentine's Day was, assuming you're alive and listening to the show.
I hope your Valentine's Day was better than that. I'm just going to say it. I hope so. Well, guys, it's been a long episode, but we sure did miss you last week. But aside from sick animals and moving and everything, we did get to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. Yes. And so thank you, everybody, for continuing to listen, even though we're two friends who like to talk about true crime, and that's it. We started doing this really for us. Yeah. And the fact that you listen is
we are
awesome,
definitely not professionals.
We are definitely not professionals. And, it's so funny to meet people. And as I've done this show in my life, girl, I can't wait to talk to you about my PTA, because I've got some assistant district attorneys up in my PTA who have done some amazing crime. And I'm like, do you want to be on my show? We're at the PTA board meeting. You want to come on my show? Let's come on my show. So, hey, Heather. Hey, Kayla. Hey, Megan. I'm saying hi to everybody. But it's so funny to just be I'm just this kind of quirky mom in this group of PTA moms, and then just go, oh, you have a true crime I am not the only person who likes true crime. It's really funny. I have made so many friends between our listeners and the people that message the show, and Glenn still talks to us outside of the show and stuff, and people message us all the time about stuff. And so and hey, Anna, we have a new listener. Anna's going to send us some beer. Yay! Yeah, I can't pronounce. Yay! So I'm just very thankful for everybody and all the listeners, and beer recommendations, story recommendations, all those things. Yep, we love you guys. Thank you. Make sure to leave us a review. Make sure to share us so other people can find us. Give us all the stars. All the stars. You can leave us a voicemail on our website, which is
on Facebook and catandashley.com. So, yeah.
Yep. Find us. Leave us a message. Send us your story ideas. We will eventually get to them.
I do them same day sometimes.
We love you. I know. Same day. Same
Great
day.
service
do it.
here.
But thank you so much for listening. And until next week, please be safe and be kind to one another. Don't go murdering people. But anyway, we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.